Hi everyone. So I said at the end of the last video that that was the basic tutorial was more or less over, and that's very much true, but there were just a couple of systems and mechanics of the game that I didn't get a chance to cover and just wanted to do a sort of loose ends wrap up video before we move on to videos about the more complex systems. So first up, and we're going to cover these in no particular order, is Agile Ships. So I mentioned medium ships tend to be smaller, more nimble, and one of the ways that's reflected is by the fact that they're agile, and this carries a number of advantages. They can roll instantly, um, or they can make more than one turn at a time before suffering turn delay. So, how do you know if a ship's agile? Well, it'll tend to be one of the smaller ships. You don't get any agile capital ships, and if you hover over the actual picture, and you can also see this in fleet selection, it'll say no, it's medium ship and agile. So, what does that let me do? Well, I'm just going to show you by moving the Centis frigate, by turning it around. Now it says current turn delay 2. Okay, but we'll click on that and you'll see that I still have the turn options to go. So I click on it again, and I still have them, and I can actually keep going round until I'm ready to move forward, at which point the turn delay kicks in, and you can see I've got delay 1. So the turn delay after I finished my massive turn there is 2, but it doesn't kick in immediately. And we can do that any which way. So turn, yep, turn, yep, and then go, and then turn again. So it's only once you finished all your initial turns does the turn delay kick in, and that's what it means to be agile. And it lets them sort of turn on a dime actually, and it's if you, because their initiative's probably quite high, lets you get into sort of good positions. The other thing I wanted to highlight a bit was just electronic warfare icons. So there was a couple of icons that actually these were clipped out in previous recordings, just the way I sort of set things up. But if you click on the green one, that will show your own electronic warfare. So you can see I've got the enemy ship targeted. And if you click on the red one, it's exactly the reverse. It shows that the enemy ship has got me targeted. And so you do them together. You also have a couple of other icons up here. FS is just full screen, toggles that, and then you have a settings dial, and it's just about setting some hotkeys, and then also about zoom level to strategic view. What does it mean by that? It means that when you zoom out enough, the ships start being reflected just by green and red icons, whereas when you're much closer in, you can see the actual graphics for the ships. Okay. While we're talking about UI, it's also worth just having a look at the bottom here. I'd mentioned before about the lobby chat, and you can still chat in the lobby from when you're in a game, but there's another chat tab here, and that lets you actually have a chat with directly with your opponent, and it's just only people who are in viewing the game can see that chat, and no one else will see it in the lobby. So that can be quite useful just for general trash talking or talking about the specific game, or just generally saying hello, good luck, have fun, and the sort of levels of sportsmanship that we all welcome. Another thing I wanted to cover just while we're in the movement phase is initiative penalties. So we mentioned initiative, you roll a d100 to see who moves first and last, and ships have, if you overrule them, a sort of base bonus to that. So the Thetis, if you look closely, you can see at the bottom of the tooltip has a base of 65, the Jacoan, a much larger, slower ship, has a base of 0, and so on, and fighters themselves have a base of 80, so they're even more likely to go later in the turn than the Thetis. But also next to the Thetis you'll see a modifier of -10, and why this has been modified is because it's going too slow. Ships that are travelling speed 5 or above don't attract any modifier, but ships that are travelling below 5 attract -10 modifier per unit of speed below 5. So because the Thetis is going at 4, it has -10. Magic One's going at 3, so it's -20. If it was going at 2, it would have -30, 1, -40, and so on. The enemy ship is moving at speed 5, and so it doesn't have any modifier at all, and you can see what the modifiers are just by hovering over the ship. There are certain weapons in the game that also kind of modify initiative, but they're more in the sort of esoteric branches of things, so we won't talk about that just now. The other thing I just wanted to highlight was the ship control sheet for fighters. So we've seen ships many times, but the fighters one's slightly different. It just has all the fighters that are in that squadron. Squadron size is 6, which is the standard size for a unit. I realise in the fleet selection I said you could change that. There's only really two reasons you would ever actually change the standard size. One is you have a large game, and so you pile your fighters up into sort of squadrons of 9 or even 12 for light fighters, and that's just to make movement easier, frankly, less units to move overall. Or if you have less than 6, that's because you're just using up the last of your points, and so you might take a much smaller squadron just to sort of fill things out, but it's not something that you would typically do, so that's worth pointing out. And in terms of the fighter control sheet, each fighter has its own health, each fighter has its own weapon, and we'll come back to that. In fact, let me just sort of pause this and take us through to the weapons phase, because there's something I want to show you there. Okay, so we're now, everyone's finished their movement in this game and we're ready to shoot each other. So, one thing that I didn't cover in the weapons tutorial is how you select all weapons of a single type. And actually, there's another thing, like you can see that ships can occupy the same hex, so when you go down, if you click on that, you can see enemy fighters are on the same tile as Magic Wand. Well, that's not a problem really, you can still hover over the name, you can still right click on that name to bring up the ship control sheets, as so. But it's just worth knowing that that's how the UI displays ships that are on the same hex. And actually, if you look really closely, you can see the fighters and my ship occupying the same hex. But it's not really what I wanted to talk about. What I wanted to talk about was how do you select weapons of the same type to fire together, so you're not having to individually click on them all. Although there's nothing to prevent you doing that. But a quicker way is if I wanted to fire all my twin arrays as a broadside against the enemy hip, typos creeping in there, you would just right click on any one of those weapons and it will select them all. Equally right clicking again will deselect them all. So rather than, as I say, individually clicking on them all, what I can do is just right click all the twin arrays, right click all the light pulse weapons, and then left click on enemy ship, and then target them, and you'll see they'll all light up to confirm that they've been targeted, and it's a much quicker way of firing and is very useful when you're targeting fighters. So again, to target fighters, actually I'll highlight something else here. You see these weapons down the bottom? So those are fighter guns, so 6 guns for 6 fighters, and if you right click on all of them, you'll see them all light up in the ship control sheet as well. And again, you can just do that to quickly target the ship down there. But equally, if you wanted to untarget one and shoot something else, you can use these buttons down here. And when you do it for a capital ship, the reactor and the sensors and the engine, they all display down there. And it's not any different from doing it in the ship control sheet, but it sometimes is more a convenient way of doing it, particularly for fighters. So it's worth knowing about. The other thing I just wanted to show you was damage. So you can see that I've been shooting up the ship for fun already, and it started to take damage on the primary structure. One of the things that I think I implied but never said it right is, like, to destroy a ship you need to destroy all of its primary structure, or destroy its reactor, or destroy its bridge, the CNC. Those are the main ways, possibly the only ways that a ship will be destroyed. So you can see this one's already taken damage. Some of its systems have these, their health bar, if you like, has turned orange. That means that there's been a critical hit against those systems, some critical damage. So for weapons, if you look at the bottom of the tooltip, it says damage reduced, damage reduced. For thrusters, I mentioned this briefly in a previous video, but first point of channel thrust is ignored. But more severely is if these core systems within the primary structure. Is you see for the reactor, output altered by -8, and what that means is this ship has had to turn off its rear weapons to get 8 extra power to make up for that 8-point deficit, which is because the reactor's taken some damage and is no longer as efficient as it previously was. Okay, and the final thing I just wanted to show was just sort of take a quick look at hit charts. So I hovered over this earlier, just when you bring up the ship control sheet and hover the mouse over the picture, In fact, let's do it for the enemy, not that it's any different. You can see the notes on the ship appear, so if there's any special rules applying to that ship, they would appear under the notes section. And then you have the hit chart. So for the hit chart, you have primary, front, aft, port, and starboard, and it's giving you the percentages of each part of that ship within that section being hit by incoming weapons fire. So for the front, for example, you've got a 15% chance of hitting a thruster, you've got a 20% chance of hitting a heavy laser, 20% chance of hitting any mine, and so on. It shows all that. And then for the primary section, we have a 40% chance of hitting the hull, 50% jump engine. And you can, one of the more advanced things you can think about is, okay, which side do I want to shoot this ship from? What are my chances of hitting what I really want to hit? And it's worth knowing that how, also like for your own ships, how vulnerable are your important, like your main weapons at the front to incoming fire. So do you want to orient your ship so that it's taking damage from the sides, and then preserving those important ships? So some nice sort of tactical things to think about, and this is where you get the information about the hit charts. Alright, and I think that's just about all the loose ends that I wanted to tie up. So thanks again for listening. This does, I hope, truly end now the sort of basic tutorials, and as I say, future videos will focus on some of the more weird and wacky mechanics in the game, and we can have a lot of fun just sort of talking you through them. Alright, thank you.